Cool. So we are live and recording. So, like I said, today I'm going to dive into how I've lost 20 pounds over the past, I'm thinking about how many months it's been. It's been around 8.5 months over this time period that I've lost it. And I'm going to just really answer your guys' questions as to how I lost it, what I did, give you guys all the details. If you're watching live and there are additional comments that you have while I'm recording this, put them in the comments, in this Facebook Live, and I'll answer them right here. I'm trying to be an open book with all of this, not trying to hold anything back. So I think this is going to be good. So just to give a little bit of context as to when I started this fat loss phase, this whole entire, when I decided I wanted to lose weight in general, why I did it. So this was back in October, November, when I was kind of toying around with the idea of I kind of want to get in a little bit better shape. I wasn't in terrible shape. I was consistently working out, eating well, eating, good foods. But I was really prioritizing powerlifting for the year or two prior to that. And with powerlifting, you don't have to gain weight to be good in powerlifting. I think there's this misconception that powerlifters they bulk up, gain a bunch of body fat, because they have to. And it's not that you necessarily have to, but it's just when you're eating the most amount of food for your body that you can, you have more fuel for your workouts, you have more protein, carbs, calories for recovery. So you're going to perform better because you're going to have more energy, but then you're also going to have more fuel coming in to recover from that. So that was the whole kind of gist around how I maybe got up to my heaviest weight, which was 220 at this time period, at this point back in October, November. So I was just trying to eat as much as, I could without gaining weight too quickly. I purposely was trying to gain a little bit of weight actually at some point because I wanted to purposely try to, force my body to build muscle. And the best way to build muscle is to be in a calorie surplus, meaning we're eating a little bit more than what we burn. That's not to say that you can't build muscle while not gaining weight. You can, but to be in the best optimal position to build muscle, you'll want to be in a little bit of a surplus. So that was kind of why or how I got to this point where I was around 220. It was back in October, November, and I just was getting to a point where it was the heaviest I've ever been. I wasn't really liking how my clothes were fitting, how they were tugging on my sides. Sometimes it took longer than I wanted to find a shirt that I felt comfortable in, honestly. And this is something that you probably don't hear a lot of guys talk about, but it happens, to all of us. So I was just feeling a little bit, insecure with where I was at. And then also a big motivator for me was my son. He was born November 16th, but around this time, October, November, when I was toying around with the idea of wanting to lose weight and just, like I said, overall get in better shape, his due date was coming up. He actually was 3 weeks early. But I knew it was coming up, and being the healthiest version of myself was so important to me for him. Because if you guys, have been in this Facebook group and have watched my lives or, listened to my podcast for I don't even know how long, a big part of just why I do what I do or why I help coach people is because of my parents, because they struggled with their health all my entire life. Heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, overweight, obesity, all these things. And they're no longer with us, both of them. And a lot of that is because of, maybe them not taking care of their health as much. And just for context too, my dad, he had his first heart attack before I was even born. And heart disease, is really prevalent in his side of the family. So I'm thinking, okay, now this is me, we're having a kid. I want to be as healthy as possible for him. While I do lift weights, exercise regularly, do eat, generally healthy foods, me just carrying that much weight probably wasn't the best for my body, especially with just the family history, genetics and things. So I was I really want to get in better shape because I want to be as healthy as possible for him. And I want to be around as long as possible for him. And, it might sound silly when you're listening to this, me hearing this, okay, I'm going to be 30 this month, actually, August. That was another motivator for me for losing weight. But I'm going to be 30, so it's not like, I'm extremely old or up there in age. It's my first kid. But because I saw my parents struggle so much, this is something that is always kind of on my head of just making sure I'm staying as healthy as possible for the people around me. And now especially, Aiden, my son. But so he was a big motivator for me. Then also some of this too was like, I'm going to be 30 in like 8 months, now in just a few weeks, but I'm going to be 30. And I wanted to like feel just more confident and feel like, okay, maybe I wasn't going to get in the best shape of my life by 30, but I was going to get, pretty damn close. And I wanted to just feel a lot better. So these were all motivators as to why I decided to, okay, I want to, lose weight before my 30th birthday. So those were all, reasons why I wanted to do it. So wanted to kind of run through, now that you guys have some context as to like why I decided to do this, some questions that you guys had, because I made a post in here asking you guys, hey, what do you guys want to know about this fat loss phase, how I lost this 20 pounds? And a lot of you guys did comment on here and ask some specific questions. So I'll kind of go through them and then kind of talk about, the process too. So one question that you guys had was, what was my gym/workout routine? What did it look like? What kind of workouts was I doing? How many days a week and those types of things. So pretty much this whole entire time, I was working out 5 days a week. That's pretty standard for me. Fits well with my schedule. I enjoy it. If I do 6 days a week, I don't recover very well. I feel sore too many days of the week. My joints start to get achy. It also isn't great with my schedule because, being busy with work and all this stuff. So 5 days a week is like a good sweet spot for me. And if I go down to 4, like I can obviously do 4 if I can do 5, but I start to like miss the gym too much and kind of need that 5th day or I don't feel as good. So 5 days a week of working out was what I did basically this whole time. I did go on, there was one vacation we went on back at the end of April where I just didn't work out at all. But pretty much other than that 1 week, I was pretty consistent with 5 days a week. So what kind of workouts did I do then? Because I know a lot of people have asked like, what kind of cardio did you do? Did you do any cardio? How long did you do cardio? Did you do just lifting? Like, what did you do? So I didn't do any cardio at all this whole entire, 8 months or so. So basically November 20th was when I kind of officially declared, okay, I want to lose weight. And now we're at August 3rd. So we're at about, I think, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August. So we're at pretty much 8.5 months. So the whole entire 8.5 months, I didn't do any cardio at all. All I did was a combination of my like powerlifting / bodybuilding style lifting. So what I mean by like powerlifting, bodybuilding style lifting is powerlifting, you could kind of lump it into that category. If you're doing any kind of sets between the rep ranges of maybe like 1 to 3. So like you do any number of sets throughout the week in that low rep range, you're not really getting like a ton of muscle building out of it. You're mostly just focusing on, strength, building strength. And then, I kind of prioritize building strength in the squat, bench, and deadlift because I just enjoy doing that. But so some of my sets and some of my workouts were prioritized around that rep range, but then I always had some kind of exercises that I did after that, like squat, bench, or deadlift, where I did the more like bodybuilding, quote unquote, style lifting, which can be lumped into anything where you're doing sets of like 6 to up to maybe like 15 or 20 reps per set. So like if you go into the gym and you do, like a back and bicep workout and you're doing, pull downs or cable rows and then bicep curls, and you're doing like 3 sets of 6 to 15 or 3 sets of 10 to 12 reps on those exercises, you're pretty much working out in a quote unquote bodybuilding style training. So that's kind of what I mean by those terminologies. But those are the type of workouts I did. Just 5 days a week. I prioritized the squat, bench, and deadlift, but then did some extra exercises after that in that kind of higher rep range to focus on building and then, keeping the muscle that I have. So no cardio at all. So somebody also asked, so what was my calorie intake What was my calorie deficit? What did that look like? So I want to also like preface this by saying like this was my calorie intake. I've spent a number of years even, but especially months, learning how many calories I need to maintain my weight, how many calories I need to gain weight, and how many calories I need to lose weight. Like I've spent years learning this, seeing how my body reacts to different calorie levels. This is something that is really cool to work with clients on. Is obviously as they go through the program, we figure out how many calories their body needs. Because of different calculators I use, I can get a good estimate as to how many calories like a client burns per day, but it doesn't always exactly work out that way. So like as they go through the program, we really learn and collect data on, okay, like you're eating this much, this is how your body's changing. This tells me, okay, this is maybe a little bit too much food for you. This is how your body changes when we go down to this calorie level. Maybe that's a little too little calories for you. So this is something that I've learned over years of collecting data on myself, and now I can like really pick it apart pretty quickly in clients just from looking at information, just from doing this for so long. But I have collected so much information that I know that I burn anywhere between 3,100 and maybe up to 3,400 calories per day on average. So that's kind of like my range of my what I would call maintenance calories. So how many calories I burn. So if I eat between 3,100 and 3,400 on most days, I'm going to like maintain my body fat level. So I'm not going to gain or lose any body fat if I eat between that range. Now, obviously, like it can be different, if I eat 3,400 calories, the high end of that range, but I just lay in bed and don't move all day, then I might gain a little bit of body fat that day. Or if I eat the low end and, eat 3,100 calories, but I have, like this super long, like 2-hour strenuous powerlifting workout, and then I, am walking or hiking all day, getting like 15,000 steps, then even on the low end of that 3,100, I might actually still lose body fat. So like it varies depending on, how much activity and stuff I'm doing throughout the day, but that's a good range where if I'm consistently between those numbers, I'm going to basically maintain my body fat level over time. So the amount of calories that I ate when I was in my fat loss phases or my calorie deficit, meaning I was eating less calories than what I burn to, force fat loss, I would be somewhere around between like 2,500 to maybe 2,700 calories, maybe between 26, 27. Maybe that's a little bit better of a range there. So my calorie deficit was I was eating around 500, maybe up to 700 calories less than what I burn, depending on how many walks I went on that day, how extra activity I got in, and so on. So that's what my calorie level looked like when I was in the fat loss phase. And like I said, this is just for me and my body. This is what I found my body responds best to. Other people respond way better to a smaller calorie deficit. So like if you brought your calories 500 to 700 down from what your maintenance would be, you might respond very poorly. Your hunger might be through the roof. You might feel super sluggish, irritable, and then you might not even see the scale really move because you're holding on to a lot of inflammation because your calories are too low, a lot of physical stress. So don't take this information and think, okay, I need to find my maintenance and then do 700 calories lower than that, because it doesn't necessarily work best for everybody. But I found that this is what I kind of have to do. And also too, I did mention that I brought my calories down by 500 to 700, but I probably wasn't even in a 500 to 700 calorie deficit, because as you eat less food, your metabolism slows down a little bit. So that normal maintenance calorie range between 3,100 and 34, whenever I bring my calories down, it probably actually shifts over a little bit to maybe 2,900 to 3,200. Just from eating less food. Like I have less food coming in, so I have less energy, so I burn less calories from talking. Like I don't talk with my hands as much. I maybe don't fidget as much. Maybe I end up going on less walks because I just overall, have less energy going through my body. So even though I'm dropping my calories by 500 to 700, I probably actually wasn't in a 500 to 700 calorie deficit. It probably was closer to maybe like a 400-ish calorie deficit on average. So just a little bit of a note there. But somebody also asked like what my carb intake was like. So on days where I was in like my fat loss calorie range, I was probably between 250 to 300 grams of carbs per day. So those were like my lower calorie days when I was at that like 2,600 calorie mark. When I was at maintenance at like the 31 to 3,400 calories, my carbs were probably at like 400 to 500. You might be listening to this like, holy crap, that's a lot of carbs. But like I said, this is specific to my body. And, if I wanted to maintain my weight at that 3,100 to 3,400 calorie mark, I already am getting enough protein with those calories. I'm already getting enough fat. Just fill it in with carbs and make them from mostly healthy sources with a little bit of, fun in there too. And that's kind of what I did on my maintenance days. Some people might be thinking even 250 to 300 grams of carbs is a lot. But I have had clients, women, who we have gotten their carbs up to like over 200 and well over 200. I believe there were a couple that we even got up to like 300 before grams of carbs. So I think a lot of people really fear carbs and think it's something that they have to limit, but you really don't have to limit carbs when you are losing weight. As long as you are hitting your calorie range, that's good for your body, and putting yourself into a calorie deficit, that's good for your body, and hitting your protein intake, making sure you're getting enough fat for proper hormone health. And then the carbs, just kind of let them fall where they may there, but having a higher carb diet isn't necessarily a bad thing. If you do currently have some form of diabetes or struggle with that, then you want to be more mindful of your carb intake for sure. But if you don't have any blood sugar issues currently, then you don't feel like you have to restrict carbs. It makes no difference in fat loss. Fat loss comes down to your calorie range. Are you getting enough protein to maintain muscle? And then obviously what kind of exercise you're doing, making sure you're doing some kind of lifting to maintain your muscle too. Another question that somebody asked was, what kind of foods I ate? So let me actually answer this question first. Somebody asked the timing of my nutrition. So what times of the day did I eat throughout this whole entire process? So obviously each day varies a little bit, but for the most part, I was eating and currently eat around like 4 different quote unquote meals per day. So I usually eat once around like 6. I usually eat once around usually like 10 a.m. And then I eat again, usually around 2 p.m. And then again, usually at like 6 p.m. And that's usually the last time I eat at like 6 or 7 p.m. Sometimes I might have like a small snack, maybe at like 7:30 or so. But usually that last meal at 7 is when I kind of stop because I'm usually, hitting my calorie goals and stuff by then. So those are usually the times that I eat. And as far as what I eat, so somebody asked like what I eat around my workouts, and then also like what kinds of foods I ate. So this is what I'm currently eating. This is a schedule that I am currently doing. Not saying this is necessarily what you need to do, but this is what I'm currently doing, and it's been working very well. And I've been able to stick to it. I work out now pretty much first thing in the morning. I wake up around 5:30 and usually am starting my workout at like 6:30. So I usually wake up, and the first quote unquote meal, and I call it like a meal because it's most people wouldn't consider this a meal, but the first thing I eat is usually Pop-Tarts. And people are like, Pop-Tarts? Like I was talking to a client about this, and she's like, wait, we can have Pop-Tarts? Yes, you can have Pop-Tarts. Sure, we don't want our whole entire diet to be Pop-Tarts. We don't want that to be the case. But if you're hitting your calorie range, you're having mostly whole foods, you're hitting your protein intake, it's okay to have protein or have Pop-Tarts for part of your diet here and there, and maybe even close to every day, depending on, how well you're doing with making sure you're still getting plenty of fruits and vegetables the rest of the day. So my first meal is my quote unquote pre-workout meal, and I have Pop-Tarts. And the reason why I have Pop-Tarts first thing is because, like I said, I wake up and I immediately work out pretty much. By the time I get out of bed, brush my teeth, and everything, like I am starting my workout within an hour for sure. So because I'm starting my workout so quickly, I don't want to have this like big, super balanced meal, because then it's still going to be digesting while I'm working out. And it's going to, one, like when we're working out, we want blood flow to go to the muscle. It's going to help to provide like nutrients to the muscle as you're working out. So it's going to help performance that way. And if you're having a big meal beforehand, a lot of that blood flow is actually going to go to your digestive system to help digest that food. So we want the blood flow to be more towards our muscles, the muscles that we're using in our workout, and not just filling up, our stomach and everything and breaking down that food. So that's one reason why I have Pop-Tarts, is because it's mostly just easily digestible carbs. So it's going to digest very quickly. So I'm not going to be digesting those Pop-Tarts really as much when I'm working out. So that's one reason. And then another reason why I have the Pop-Tarts right before I work out is because they digest very quickly, but I'm not going to feel super full during my workout. Like, you don't want to feel full, uncomfortable, because then you're not going to probably be able to push yourself as hard in your workouts. Like, have you ever had like a huge meal and then tried to go work out and you feel like, you're burping up the food constantly, you feel like you're going to throw up, especially if you are doing like heavy squats or something, especially if you do heavy squats and you wear like a lifting belt with it, all that pressure there, it's not comfortable. So if you are working out first thing in the morning, like within an hour of waking up, I really recommend having a meal or snack that is just carbs that are very fast digesting. So they don't have a lot of protein, they don't have a lot of fat in them, they don't have a lot of fiber in them. That way you can get some quick energy from those fast digesting carbs, but then it doesn't mess with your digestion. It doesn't mess with your stomach being uncomfortable while you're working out. So that's what I have been eating first thing in the morning. And then I go work out, have my workout, shower and everything. And then my next meal, typically I have Greek yogurt. So I get the Oikos 000 Greek yogurt. I get vanilla. I love that yogurt. So good, very high protein, low calorie as well. But I have the yogurt. I put a little bit of granola in there, and then usually I'll have some kind of fruit with it. And most of the time it's blueberries. So first meal is usually Pop-Tarts. Second meal is yogurt with granola and a bunch of blueberries. And that's usually my kind of second meal right now. Then my third meal, like I said, I usually have at like 2 p.m. A lot of times that third meal is something that I prepped on the weekend or earlier in the week of some kind of like main protein source. And then I just kind of add whatever I want to it to give me some carbs and a little bit of fat with it too. So for example, most of this week I've been having lean ground beef burgers. So this weekend I made a bunch of 93% lean ground beef burgers, really high protein, lower on the fat side. And I'll have like 2 of those patties with 1 bun, and then I'll have a little bit of ketchup, and then I'll usually have some kind of fruit with that as well, either a banana or a couple of clementines or something like that. So I'll really try to really emphasize having some kind of fruit with every single meal for sure, or some kind of vegetable with every meal, other than that pre-workout Pop-Tart, because I don't want that to slow down digestion. But that's kind of like what my second meal looks like. Super simple, lean ground beef burger with bun, ketchup, and then some fruit, and then maybe even some like oven baked chips if I have, a little bit of extra calories there that I want to throw in there. But super simple. Don't overcomplicate it. And that's usually what my second meal looks like. And then my third meal is some kind of chicken or fish, usually something that's already been prepped. And then I'll pair it with, maybe we'll make some rice with it, or a little bit of pasta with maybe like broccoli mixed in, or maybe I'll just have some other fruit on the side if we don't have any like vegetable prepped or anything there. But that's usually what like my dinner looks like. Every so often, sometimes we'll also like get Chipotle instead sometimes. That's also another thing. And, there are ways to order Chipotle to make it more weight loss friendly by, not getting a ton of the sauces on there, getting, pretty much just like the rice, a bunch of lettuce, the vegetables, and then, some kind of like protein or meat in there, and maybe some cheese. Like that is a really good way to structure your like Chipotle bowl to still make it weight loss friendly. But that's kind of what my, last meal of the day would look like. So just to kind of like give you some tips there, is what I would do is I pick three protein sources that I wanted to make as like my main protein sources throughout the week. So if you kind of refer back to like the meals that I just mentioned, yogurt is my first one. That's my first big protein source that I have. My second one is burgers, the lean ground beef. You want to, like, if you buying ground beef, you want to get at least 90% lean. Anything lower than 90%, like if you get 85% or 80, or especially if I think there's like a 75% or so, you're going to get a lot of fat with that and not as much protein, and then it's going to be a lot higher calories. So you want to get at least 90%. If you can find 93, that's even better. And some stores even have 96% lean as well, which is really, really good. Or you could even get like ground turkey and make ground turkey burgers, which I think those you can even find like maybe even 99% lean, which is even better. But the burgers, the lean ground beef burgers, are kind of like my second main protein source. And then my third main protein source, like I said, it's either like chicken thighs that I cooked in bulk in the beginning of the week, or maybe some kind of fish, usually salmon if I do cook that. But I just picked like three main protein sources. Those are going to be like my core items of my meals. Now, okay, what else do I need in my meal? Do I need any carbs in my meal that I need to add? Do I need any fruit or vegetables in my meal that I need to add? And then I just plug those other little pieces around the main protein sources that I already picked out. And that's a super simple way to structure your meals better. Don't overthink it. You don't need these like fancy recipes that are 15 ingredients long that take over an hour to make. Especially, if you're tracking your food and trying to hit a specific calorie range, every extra ingredient you add in there that has calories, like, you want to be accounting for it. So it makes the whole meal prep or the cooking process so much more time consuming too, if you have these like super long, difficult, complicated recipes. Now, if you like cooking and you enjoy it, and it's like an art form for you, almost like de-stress, then, definitely do those things. But if you're struggling with like prepping your meals because they feel so complicated and they're so time consuming for weight loss, really think about just simplifying it. Do I want my core protein items to be this week or this day? What are the three items that I probably need? And then what fruit and what other, healthy carbs can I just pair around it, or, vegetables too, and just make it super simple that way. So I'm kind of looking at other questions that I wrote down that you guys had asked. So this was a really good question. So somebody asked, how consistent was I? How long did I stay at certain calorie levels? So for the most part, I tried to stay in my calorie deficit calories, so like the 2,600, for around 6 weeks. And then every 6 weeks, I usually would take a purposeful week, maybe even 2 weeks, where I decided to just stay at maintenance. So what that would look like is, for 6 weeks, I'd be at around 2,600 calories. And then every sixth week for 1 to 2 weeks, I would go up to probably around like 3,200 calories. And this is like the same method for the most part that we use with our clients when we go through fat loss phases. And there are a variety of reasons why I think this is so helpful and so important to do this. One is it gives you a psychological break from eating less calories, because even if you're doing like a sustainable diet where you're not crash dieting, you're not bringing your calories super low, you're just in, roughly a 500 calorie deficit maybe, eventually hunger is going to catch up to you. Eventually you're going to deal with these negative adaptations that come along with dieting, where, you're feeling sluggish, you're feeling tired, your performance in the gym is going down. You're thinking about food a little bit more often, and you just feel kind of run down. Like, it will happen because you're in a calorie deficit and losing fat for that long. So because of that, by implementing these, maintenance weeks every like 6 weeks, it gives you a psychological break from being in a calorie deficit. It also gives your body a physiological break from being in a calorie deficit, which is good for the body. It helps to kind of give you like a mental and physical reset to kind of like gear up and, crush the next 6 weeks of the like fat loss phase or the lower calories. But it also teaches you how to maintain the weight that you've lost. If you lose, in 6 weeks, let's say you lose 6 pounds, If you then take 1 to 2 weeks, go into maintenance, and then purposely eat more, but try to maintain that weight, it shows you how you can actually eat a little bit more food, maintain that 6 pound weight loss that you had, and it does a couple of things. One, it allows your body to kind of settle into like a new set point almost, as far as like the lower body weight you have. Another thing that it does is psychologically, it makes the whole weight maintenance after, you end up hitting your long-term goal way less intimidating, because like think about if you went on a long-term diet for, 8 months and lost 40 pounds. If you just did that in a straight shot without doing any kind of like purposeful maintenance phases or anything, or without learning how to actually maintain your weight along the way, you're going to lose a 40 pound. You're going to hit that goal. And then you're probably going to feel like stressed and overwhelmed and kind of like anxious about, okay, now how do I maintain it? Like, do I need to eat this low calories for the rest of my life? Like, can I eat a little bit more? If I do, am I going to gain weight? Like, what does that look like? And all this stuff. And I find that's why so many people struggle to maintain the weight that they lost, is because they don't have planned maintenance periods along the way. And then they try to lose all this weight all in one shot, but they don't learn how to maintain it. And then they end up gaining it all back afterwards. But by doing these maintenance periods every 6 weeks, and they don't have to be every 6 weeks. A lot of times we'll have clients in fat loss phases for anywhere between 6 to 10 weeks, depending on how their body is responding. I look at biofeedback. I look at how their digestion is, sleep, stress, all this stuff. Look at like, are they running into a plateau as well? So it's not always every 6 weeks where it's a good idea to do this. Sometimes it's, you can go up to 10. Sometimes you can even go up to 12. But that's why it's important to like just know the signs as to when you probably need to go up to maintenance, or have like a coach that knows how to. But by doing this, every 6 to 10 weeks, you're able to, like I said, spend 1 to 2 weeks eating more food, learn how to maintain your weight while eating more food. So then, when you've done that, like let's say over the first or after the first 6 weeks, you lost 6 pounds, then maintained it for 2 weeks. You're like, okay, like I maintained my new body weight of 190. So I was able to maintain 190, my 6 pound weight loss for 2 weeks, which is great. Like I feel confident doing that. Now, let's say you lose another 6 weeks or 6 pounds over the next 6 weeks. Now you're down to 184. You go into maintenance for 2 weeks, learn how to maintain your new weight, your new body weight at 184. And you're like, okay, that wasn't that bad. Like just maintaining those, extra 6 pounds that I lost. And then you go into another fat loss phase for maybe this one, you are seeing really good progress. You aren't really super hungry. So you go 8 weeks and you lose 8 pounds. Now you're down to 176. And now, you maintain for, 1 to 2 weeks. And then maybe you go into one more fat loss phase and lose, another 6 pounds in 6 weeks. And now you're down to 170. Over that time period, you lost 20 pounds. But you've only had to maintain, 6 pound loss at one point, then another 6 pound loss at one point, and then another 8 pound loss at one point, and then another 6 pound loss at one point. So it gives you so much less anxiety because you learn how to maintain these smaller chunks of weight loss along the way. And then, like I said, you also allow your body to kind of settle into its new set point along the way. So you're way less likely to gain the weight back afterwards. So it's kind of what I did, and that is why we do that with all of our clients too when they go through fat loss phases, and why, all of our clients, they're able to maintain the weight and why they see so much success. And it's also why we run into plateaus a little bit less too, because we have these planned maintenance periods that help to kind of bring your metabolism up a little bit along the way as well. So somebody asked too, and this is a really good question: how did I incorporate real life into my journey? So I'm assuming that they mean like days where socially I'm going out, or days where we're going out to dinner, or days where there's like some kind of celebration, or maybe even just days like I'm feeling really run down, really hungry, and I'm like, I need more than 2,600 calories this day. And also too, like, a lot of people listening to this might be like, 2,600 calories, like that's a lot of food. Like that should be super easy, but it's all individually dependent and relevant. Like 2,600 calories feels low to me, because my body, when I start eating less than that 3,100 calorie mark, my hunger starts to ramp up. Just like, maybe if you're listening, maybe your maintenance is 2,000, and then when you start eating 1,600, your hunger starts ramping up because your body senses you're eating less. It's the same thing, but it's just, different to each person. But how did I, incorporate real life into my journey and all these celebrations and things like that along the way? So this is a really good question. And there are a few reasons, a few ways as to how I incorporated it and why the thought of incorporating life into this was not stressful at all for me. Number one was, if I burn, let's say on average, 3,100 calories per day, and I'm aiming for 2,600 calories per day, and that is kind of like my fat loss range, my fat loss calorie mark, that if I maintain 2,600 calories for a week, I'll probably lose around 1 pound of fat. Like, that's just a rough calculation, but that's a rough estimate. Knowing and realizing, if I have a day where I quote unquote overeat on my calorie goal, and let's say I have more than 2,600 calories and I have 2,900, even though I went over my calorie goal, because I know I burned probably around 3,200 calories, I know I still was probably in some kind of calorie deficit. So I might not have lost like the same amount of fat on that day as what I would have if I ate 26. I may have slowed down my progress a little bit as far as my rate of fat loss, but like having that knowledge of knowing I still ate a little bit less than what I burned. So like at the very worst, I just maintained my body fat level that day. And at the best, maybe I still burned like a little bit of body fat that day and still made a little bit of progress. I inched a little bit forward. That has been key. Like knowing that, just because of the knowledge I have regarding how the body works and everything, and remembering that has made this journey, this process so much like mentally easier, psychologically easier, because I know like I have this larger range of calories to hit. Like even though my calorie goal is 2,600, as long as I eat between 2,600 and 3,200, I know I'm not going to gain body fat. I'm not going to go backwards. Like sure, my timeline might be delayed. It might take me longer to reach my end goal, but I'm not going to go backwards as long as I don't go over 3,200 calories, because I know that's how much I approximately burn. And this is something that I like try to really teach clients too, is like when we're in a fat loss phase and your calorie goal is, let's say 1,600, but you end up eating 1,800 instead, like you're probably still in somewhat of a calorie deficit on that day. So you still probably inched a little bit forward with progress. And I think that really helped to ease my mind. And I think it really would help to ease your minds. If you realize that, like if you are working with a coach and, you join our program and, I give you a calorie range and I'm like, okay, you should lose approximately close to 1 pound per week of fat. If you go over by a couple hundred calories, like you're not gaining fat from going over your calorie goal unless you go over what your maintenance would be. Now, if I, had days where I ate 4,000 calories because my maintenance is like 3,200, like, yeah, I'm probably going to go a little bit backwards now. I'm going to actually put on a little bit of body fat that day. But as long as I stayed around 3,200, then all I'm doing as far as hurting my progress is just like delaying me reaching my end goal, which I was okay with. And this is another really important point as far as how did I incorporate real life into my journey, is I pretty much gave myself more than enough time to hit my goal. My goal when I started this was to lose 20 pounds by my 30th birthday. So I wanted to see under 200 on the scale before my 30th birthday. Like I said, I started at 220. There's nothing special about being under 200. Like, if I'm 199 versus 200 doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, but it was just, some type of goal. But I gave myself more than enough time. A healthy rate of fat loss or weight loss is around 1 pound per week. So I theoretically could have, tried to push this and lost the 20 pounds in 20 weeks, which would have been around 5 months. But instead, I gave myself those, maintenance weeks in between because I knew it would make it so much easier to not deal with plateaus. And I also knew it would make it so much easier to maintain my weight after. So I incorporated those. I also, even along the way in those 6 weeks where I was hitting my fat loss calories, I had days sprinkled in there where I just decided, like, you know what, I'm just going to hit maintenance today. Because maybe we had a celebration, we wanted to go out to dinner. Maybe it was just a day where, I was feeling really hungry and burnt out. And I'm like, you know what, I need some extra fuel today. Or maybe I had like a really heavy workout the next day. And I'm like, you know what, I want to feel really fueled and energized for this workout because I want to try to hit, a PR on my squat. So I'm going to eat maintenance today instead. So there were days sprinkled in there that maybe necessarily weren't planned to be higher, but I kind of made a decision on the spot to be like, you know what, I'm going to eat at maintenance today. So that really helped too, just not putting a strict timeline on things. I think it's important to have some kind of timeline because, if we get too relaxed with things, then I would just choose, hey, I'm just going to do maintenance every single day, and then I would never get to my goal. So I think it's okay and good to have some kind of timeline. But I think it's important to make the timeline big enough to where it would be unreasonable for me to really not hit my goal by that time. So like I said, I could have pushed to lose these 20 pounds in 5 months, but instead I gave myself extra time. I gave myself extra maintenance days, extra maintenance weeks in there where now I've lost 20 pounds in like 8.5 months, I think we said. So I did it in 3.5 months longer time than what I could have probably done it, but it would have been harder. It would have been maybe a little bit miserable some days. I wouldn't have had the flexibility that I had. I probably wouldn't be able to maintain it as well as what I feel right now. Like I feel like I can maintain this weight for so long. Like I don't feel like I'm starving. I don't feel like it's going to be really hard for me to maintain this, body weight or body fat level right now because I included those maintenance weeks along the way. So all those things have made it so much easier to incorporate it into my real life. And this is, something I really try to get into clients' heads about too, is like, don't stress about the timeline. As long as you, stay consistent and are objective with it and knowing like, okay, I really am consistent most of the time. And sometimes, I do have a little bit more calories, but I don't overdo it. You'll eventually get there as long as you actually stay overall consistent. And I think this is too, like, brings up an important point, which is if you do approach it in this way that I did, where there were some days where on the spot I kind of decided to bring calories up to maintenance, you have to be super objective with things. You can't, like, and this is why this approach maybe doesn't really work for a lot of people who aren't super experienced with this, is because, like I said, it would have been so easy for me to every day where I felt a little bit of hunger, every day where life got a little bit in the way, for me to be like, you know what, I'm just going to eat a little bit more today. And then before I know it, like 6 out of the 7 days of the week when I was supposed to be hitting my fat loss calories, I actually hit maintenance. I'm like, okay, well, I achieved pretty much no fat loss this week. So that's why having a coach can be, so beneficial for obviously like all the other reasons of like, is this calorie range even good for me? How is my body responding? How do I even know if my body's responding well? All those, variables. Obviously, a coach is going to help get you through those, but also like being objective. And if you are working with a coach, I wouldn't really recommend to like have these maintenance days that are unplanned too often and purposely do them, because it's very easy to fall into the trap of, I'm just going to do maintenance every day, and then you end up not making any progress. So just wanted to put that little side note in there. But also this is kind of how it went. Like I started 220 on November 20th. First week of January, I was at like 214. So within like 6 weeks, I lost around like 5, maybe 6 pounds. And then first week of April, I was at 212. So from January to first week of April, 3 months, on average, I lost 2 pounds. And a lot of people would have just like given up and would have been stressed and would have been like, hey, I'm not seeing progress to my goal. But I was okay with it because during that time period, I had a little bit more maintenance weeks and a little bit more maintenance days here and there. That was also during the time, like January from April was when my wife went back to work, and I was watching Aiden for a lot of that time. So I had a lot of more stress and stuff on my plate there. So There are reasons for that, but I was okay with it. Like, that's just what it was. I didn't stress about it. I didn't freak out. And that's another reason why you want to give yourself a long timeline, because if you do have things where life does get in the way, actually, it doesn't stress you out and you don't feel like you have to like do something extreme to keep that timeline up. And then the first week of July, my average weight was 204. So in those next 3 months, lost on average 8 pounds. And then first week of August, now a month later, my average weight is like 200. So just very gradual, slow, a lot of maintenance weeks planned in there, a lot of maintenance days here and there that I kind of did on the spot too, just because of like the experience I have and knowing how to do it. But that has made all the difference. So some key points that just to kind of reiterate before I kind of wrap up is you need to give yourself time, and more than enough time. Like I said, if you want to lose 20 pounds, do not try to do it in 20 weeks, and definitely don't try to do it in less than 20 weeks. If it happens in 20 weeks, great, but don't like make that like your fail or succeed goal, because you want to give yourself enough time to where like, you're pushing yourself to be a little bit urgent with things, but you're not giving yourself too strict of a timeline where if you have 1 week where maybe things don't go as planned, that you feel like you're behind. Because once you feel like you're behind, you end up doing some extreme things to try to catch up, and that's not going to be good for your progress or your body long term. At worst, hit your maintenance calories. So if you are having a rough day, or you're going out, or you are going out to dinner or this or that, and you're like, man, it's going to be almost impossible for me to hit my fat loss calories. Maybe I didn't plan very well for the morning, of this event or whatever, and I'm going to go over my fat loss calories. At worst, hit around your maintenance, and then at the very worst, you're just going to maintain your body fat level that day, but at least not move backwards. Another key point: remember, even if you do go over your maintenance one day, you're not going to gain a ton of body fat. It takes around 3,500 extra calories to gain 1 pound of body fat. So if your maintenance is 2,000 and you eat 2,500 calories, at most, you're going to gain 1/7 of a pound of body fat, which I think if you, 1 divided by 7 is probably like 0.15 pounds of body fat you'll gain. And that's if you eat 500 calories over your maintenance, not over your fat loss calories, but over your maintenance. So remember that. And it's actually probably even lower than that, lower than like you're not even going to gain 0.15 pounds of body fat, because as you overeat, your body ramps up some other things with your metabolism to kind of burn a little bit of that extra. Your performance in the gym might even go up. So it's probably even lower than 0.15 pounds if you go over your calories by 500. So don't stress about that. It's the, constantly going over your calories by a little bit every single day that causes, the fat gain over time. Point number 4 is be objective with yourself. If you're going to have some maintenance days here or there, make sure you're not having them too often if you actually do really want to achieve your fat loss goal. And like I said, this is why, it's just so much easier to hire a coach, because they can make those decisions for you, so you're not falling into you basically sabotaging yourself. Point number 5, which I didn't really talk a whole lot about, but don't use exercise as a way to lose weight or burn fat. You might be thinking like, this is weird. Like, I always thought exercise was a good way to, lose body fat, lose weight. Exercise does burn extra calories for sure, but we want to use exercise to benefit our health, and we want to use exercise to keep our muscle around as we lose weight, because we don't want to lose muscle. When we want to lose fat, we want to lose body fat. So we want to use exercise in those two ways to maintain our health, or, get better health, and to keep our muscle mass. Exercise is not a great way to burn a lot of calories or burn body fat, because we don't burn that many calories really from exercise. Use the adjustments you make with your calorie level or your diet as like the means to losing body fat. Don't use exercise to do that purpose. Now, still exercise. It's important, especially lifting, but don't use it to burn fat. And also, another point, number 6, is have a strong why. Have a strong purpose as to why you want to do this, because there are going to be days that are going to be hard. There are going to be days you're going to want to give up. And you have to lean on why this is important to you to get you through some of those days. So for me, like I said, my big why was, I have my birthday coming up, my 30th birthday. And, it just meant a lot to me to feel better in my skin on my 30th birthday. But the biggest why behind why I want to do this was obviously my son. And I see my son every single day. I love him, obviously. So he's a very strong reason why I needed or wanted to feel healthier long term. So use that why. And our kids are one of the strongest whys that we can have. So many people, they say that they would die for their kids, right? They would jump in front of a moving car, jump in front of a bus, take a bullet for them. And I firmly believe that anyone who says that, or most people that say that, are telling the truth. They probably would. But what so many people don't do for their kids is they don't live for their kids. They don't. And what I mean by that is they don't prioritize themselves to be as healthy as possible so they can live longer and live a healthier life for them, which is really sad. But so many parents don't do that. So, if you find yourself feeling like you can or you would die for your kid, think really will you make sure you're living your healthiest life for your kid? Do that, because that's just as important. And then another reason I actually didn't put this on my notes, but I thought about it. Our last point number 7, lucky number 7, is make sure that before you jump into this fat loss phase, that you have spent some time building your calories up and eating at maintenance for a given period of time. I spent so much time eating, around 3,400 calories, eating around my maintenance, building my calorie level up before I even thought about jumping into a fat loss phase. I did that for months. For the past 1 to 2 years, I was really eating that much food. So because of that, my body responded so much better to fat loss. A lot of you listening probably have been on the yo-yo dieting train. You have been constantly jumping on from diet to diet, eating maybe 1,200 calories, 1,300 calories, 1,000 calories, maybe even doing low carb or keto, where maybe you weren't tracking calories, but your calories probably were somewhere down that low. And you've kind of yo-yo dieted between, being super strict, following the diet for, maybe 4 or 5 days, and then on the weekend, kind of binging back. And when you go through that cycle over and over, your metabolism starts to slow down, and then you have these days on the weekend where you binge and then gain body fat back, and then you end up building your body fat level up while also building your metabolism down, in a sense. So before you even think about jumping into a fat loss phase, you want to make sure you spend enough time building your calories up, what we call the priming phase in our program, which is the first phase we take all of our clients through. But you want to spend time building your calories up to that maintenance level. Usually clients spend maybe 4 to 8 weeks in this phase, depending on where they start at. But this is so important because if you don't do this, you're going to drop your calories down to your fat loss range, and your body's just not going to respond as well. You're going to be more hungry than what you should be. You're going to be more irritable, more sluggish, more tired. Your body might not even lose fat at the expected rate that it should. So you have to have this priming phase to get your body in a spot where it almost I hate to use the term accepts fat loss more, but kind of where it just responds a lot better to the deficit you give it. Or you're just going to kind of run yourself into the ground again and probably fall into that yo-yo dieting train again. So just wanted to add that 7th point in there because I didn't talk about it before, which I kind of wish I would have talked about it at the beginning of this. But it's very important that if you're going to enter a fat loss phase, especially a long-term one, that you spend time building your calories up if you're somebody who you've tried multiple diets in the past. And like I said, this was something that, I did for a year or two. Not saying you have to do it for a year or two, but I spent so much time eating around maintenance, eating that high calorie level where my body was a lot more responsive when I did drop calories than what it would have been. So I hope this was kind of helpful, eye-opening, listening to, all these points as to, what I did, over this time period, over these past 8.5 months to lose this weight. And like I said, because I used all these strategies, this was the easiest fat loss phase I've ever done. I've never been less stressed about the scale. I've never been less stressed about my progress being slow or fast or whatever than I have over these past 8.5 months. I've just been, I know the science behind it. I know what my body responds to. Just been executing, and I do this, do that, and just let the results come. And it's been really fun. And like my goal was to get under 200 before my birthday, and I did end up doing it 3 weeks early, and decided I'm just gonna maybe just keep going. Like I kind of want to lose a little bit more, see how much leaner I can get, not to like any unhealthy or unsustainable level, but because it's felt so not effortless. Like there were definitely times where I had to implement discipline and effort, and some days it was definitely hard, 100%. But right now, like I'm not starving. I don't feel like I need to overeat or binge or feel like I'm going to gain a lot of weight back. So I'm just going to keep going a little bit and see where it takes me. So yeah, I hope this was enjoyable. Definitely comment below if you have any additional questions, if you have any additional comments, if this was eye-opening, if there's anything you need clarified. Would love to answer any and all questions you might have. So yeah, that's about it for this one. Let me know if you have any questions. Appreciate you all, and I will see you guys in the next one.